Pisces, try to avoid any Virgos or Leos with the coronavirus. This is Fragments of Silicon.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. And let's get to the news. I imagine it's going to be heavily tilted in terms of content, given the coronavirus. But I don't think that's going to change our daily routines all that much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I imagine the day jobs are going to be the hardest hit. And speaking of which, to that end, Galix, why don't you go first?
So we are in Maine under significant restrictions on terms of public gatherings, and businesses that remain open. But since my job is health and personal services related, we're still open, and I am one of the 5 people who still has to actually go into the office. So thankfully, my routine isn't completely destroyed. But it's been rough with most of the things that I would do after work or outside of work canceled, and
Yep.
now we're looking at I'm starting to think about whether or not we should try and call out whether or not we should still try and do our Pathfinder game on Sunday, because
You might want to look into virtual Pathfinder.
yeah, considered it, but most of us don't have equipment, including me. Really, I don't have a webcam of any sort.
I mean,
but yeah, that's that's one of the things to consider, though, depending on how long this goes on, because
yeah,
we are less than 10 people, so technically it's legal, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a great idea. So
no.
we'll figure it out.
Right.
And I'm not sure what I'm going to do, if I'm still going to hang out with my friend on Friday. If we do, we have to figure out what we're going to do for food, because we'll have to get takeout or something, because restaurants are closed for eat-in. Otherwise, yeah, it hasn't been affecting me that much. It's still messing with my schedule enough to be very anxiety-inducing.
No doubt. I mean, there are some alternatives like drive-through gig economy. Uber Eats or DoorDash. It's like, and they're starting to implement no contact deliveries. I've gotten a few emails to that effect. DoorDash sent that the other day.
Well, I would have to sign up for it, but that'll also be something to consider.
All right, I'm just saying there are alternatives, in terms of fooding.
I know, it's just usually our routine is that we meet up somewhere and get something to eat, and then go over and play video games for a while.
Fair enough. Anyway, so anything else?
Not really.
All right, Twilight, you're up.
All right. Well, yeah, my daily routine hasn't been affected too much. I work in retail, and of course, I have to go to work, and but I've of course taken precautions. I always regularly carried some hand sanitizer around with me, so making sure to stay safe there. But also, after a few months ago, I've started carrying some hand moisturizer as well, because my hands started drying out and
Is
started forming.
your retail necessary, or is it just they haven't closed non-necessary yet where you are?
My retail, they kind of have a reputation for being open rain or snow. They kind of they just power right on through
I mean, I guess
right on through
GameStop
trains.
is considered necessary in some places, or at least they're refusing to close. Which I'm
Yeah.
sure the demand for video games hasn't gone down, so that's something.
I mean, video games you can get digitally pretty easy. Like, there's no real reason that you need to be schlepping to GameStop.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, there is if you want to pay for something partially with trade-ins. I have a friend who's a manager of a GameStop in Massachusetts, and they are not
Here,
looking forward to the pre-releases or the release events for Animal Crossing and Doom that are in a
well, I
couple
mean,
days.
well, yeah, that memo just came down.
hmm
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, of course, the governor has put out the enforcement on changing our opening closing schedules and whatnot, and we've also bowed down to the um, regulations on restaurants for now as well, since we have a cafeteria. But yeah, I still go to work and I get what I need and I hightail it home when it's time to clock out. Let's see here now. Uh, in terms of gaming, I've continued playing Atelier Rorona during the weekend, and I've played through one of the games for this week, and that's about it.
All right, Penny, you're up.
Um, well, the biggest thing that happened over the week is I finally got more RAM for my computer. So hopefully it quits blue screening so much.
Did you ram it in?
And been fairly quiet for obvious reasons.
Yep.
We just got told yesterday that our dentist appointments for next week are canceled because they're closing the entire dental clinic.
Not surprising.
And the place where we usually go to eat on Saturdays is now not even open on Saturdays. So that's fun. And yeah, most places are no dine-in. So we need to figure out what we want to do about that. If we just want to go like through Burger King or something to get breakfast on Saturday. And
That's
yeah. And yeah, just kind of been at home, living. And yeah,
yeah.
I think that's it for me. Not a whole lot's really gone on.
Mm. All right, it's my go. Well, let's see. Since I work from home, the daily routine hasn't changed too much. Like, uh, I've spent more time than I wish at Walmart because picking up supplies and such.
As long as you weren't trying to be there after 8:30.
Like, now it's during the day, but food stocks needed to be replenished, and timing was of the essence. Um, and it's the story here in Florida is pretty much the same, although they won't close the fucking beaches,
Hmm.
at least not right now. Like, and we've got idiots, still heading out spring break. You know, these Darwin Award winners, but more on that later, I'd imagine. Uh, anyway, so that's about it for news this week. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Johnson Brown of Finifugal Games. Is that how you pronounce that?
Close enough. How's it going?
Yeah. It's going as well as possible under the circumstances. Anyway, so how we like to start things is we like to get ask the person behind the game studio and so on and so forth how they got interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level.
Well, on a personal level, I've been playing since as long as I can remember. I was playing DOS games when I was about 4 years old. That's my earliest memory of it. Um, Back in the 286 that we had, so quite a while ago. Then on a professional level, I've developed software for about 14 years, but our company wanted to make a game, so I just kind of went along for the ride on that.
And do you still work at said company, or did you strike out on your own?
No, we still work at that same company. We just created a new smaller company for the game, but the original company's still functioning.
Okay.
So the advantage of that is that we were able to fund the game without needing any kickstarting or other investors.
And how big is this new company? How many people work there?
Um, so for the game, the core developers are just me and the president, who's also the programmer. Then we also have a few smaller contractors and one guy who does sound.
Hmm.
So the core development is just two people. I do the art, and the president does the programming.
And is this the first project with the sub company, or have you created other things at Finifugal?
No, this is the first project. Yeah. So the programmer has a lot of experience in the industry. He was the lead programmer on SWAT 3, Crimson
Mhm.
Skies for the Xbox, and a few others. But he wanted to actually not only program but fully design a game on his own. So that was a big push behind Colony Siege.
I see. And was it his idea? Like, where did the concept come from?
It kind of evolved over a long period of time. The game started out as a traditional RTS fully taking place in space, kind of like a planar homeworld style game. And then it went through a bunch of different changes until eventually we decided on a RTS and tower defense hybrid, taking place in a number of different locations.
I must admit that's a curious hybrid because tower defense games spawned out of RTSs. Um,
Yeah, yeah, they did. And we love tower defense games, but our complaint is that they're too restrictive in many cases. So we wanted to make one that had really free form placements, control over ground units, and a bunch of different viable strategies.
and was it difficult mixing that kind of freeform action with tower defense?
It was difficult finding a balance that worked, definitely.
Hmm.
We're pretty happy with the way things are looking now, though.
That's good. I mean, how long has the game been in development?
About 4 years.
Hmm, that's quite a while.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a little while. But part of that is because everything in the game is custom made. So the 3D engine is built from scratch. Just about everything is completely built from scratch.
Hmm. So no Unity, no Unreal here.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's all our custom code, which is nice because it allows us to optimize and make any changes needed.
I suppose so. Was there a particular reason why a custom engine was chosen rather than off the shelf middleware?
Well, our developer has so much experience making game engines,
Hmm.
um, so he just kind of wanted to make it himself because that way he has full control over everything in it, and we don't have to rely on anybody else to for documentation or the ins and outs of a game engine. I it just seemed more practical from his point of view.
And what tests do you do on the game?
What testing?
What tasks? Do you have?
Oh, okay. I did all the art. So yeah, level design, uh, pretty much anything you see.
Mm. And you know, was it difficult coming up with you know like the pathways in which all of the creatures flow through? Did you find making a tower defense game an easy challenge or otherwise?
It was definitely a big challenge for me. Partly because this is the first game I've ever worked on, and partly because doing it all by myself, I didn't have any concept art or any real references to work on. So I just kind of had to wing it.
And how did that work out for you?
It worked pretty well in the end. There was definitely a lot of struggle along the way. Um, I think it complicates things a little further since I have a very poor visual memory. I have a very hard time visualizing something I want to create before it's actually created. So I kind of had to develop these techniques for designing things in a more procedural way, more of an additive art style rather than visualizing, a cool concept and then creating it in 3D like most people would do.
Did you make models or anything to help you along the way?
Um, well, pretty much everything I just made in 3ds Max, and just played around with different styles until I found something that looked good. A lot of it too is just remembering the steps in creating that so that I could repeat those same steps to get a similar art style.
Hmm.
So, for example, for the structures, I created a set of rules about uh, snapping points for the different angles of the buildings, different rules about intersections and greeble placement.
Makes sense. And I suppose if you had to do another project of this scale and such, would you continue on with this kind of process, or would you, change it up?
Um, I'd probably use the same process because it did work.
Hmm.
It would be nice to have a full concept artist, but
Right. Well, hopefully that happens next time, I suppose. Um,
yeah, it would definitely make it easier. But it did force me to kind of expand my thinking.
hmm,
So I guess there's a lot of value in that.
true enough. And let me see here. So, in terms of the actual game, a lot can be inferred from the title Colony Siege. Presumably colonies are involved and they're under siege from something. Indeed, what force are you confronting out in space? And what's going on here? What is the plot of Colony Siege?
Well, basically, it takes place in the future. Obviously, these weird biomechanical creeps called Xenos started opening portals all over Earth and all over the system, and they destroyed Earth. And now that all that's remaining are these small independent colonies. So you're tasked as a commander with your commander ship that can build, repair, and fight. You're tasked to go from colony to colony and defend them against um, the encroaching enemy. And then there's also a secondary enemy faction called the Riven, which are
Right.
uh, th- they were originally human, and then they dabbled in a bunch of science and became deranged. So you have to defend against them as well, and they have um, fairly different methods of attacks and strategies.
Hmm. And do those attacks change depending on the kind of track you take? If you favor more, say, tower defense or more RTS.
Yeah, that definitely makes a difference. So the Xenos um, generally just go to your colony and attack your colony, while the Riven will attack anything they see. So they're more aggressive, they're more dangerous with firepower, but they're also fewer in number.
Hmm.
The Riven are also different because they don't spawn out of portals. They actually have their own bases that they launch dropships from to
Mm.
send their units at you. So their bases can actually be destroyed. So that's more of an RTS layer of strategy in those
Hmm.
missions.
And you- are there any maps where you will encounter both factions at the same time?
Yeah, there are some, and that's actually something I'm pushing to get more of as our beta and early access launch continue.
Hmm.
There are a
And
lot of maps I believe that could benefit from having um, Riven encampments that currently don't.
how many maps are in the game currently?
There's 23 missions,
Hmm.
and there are 12 different locations. So for example, this location that you're showing right now, there's
Right.
only two missions that use that style. So that's one thing that we think the game brings to the table is a really wide variety of scenery and game types. So some maps you'll be on a station where paths are pretty restricted, and other maps are just wide open on a planet.
Oh. And are the planets like giant rock like, or do we get like, grass planet, desert world, and so on and so forth?
There's all sorts of them. There's a desert world, a grass planet, lava planets,
Right.
more of a barren, rocky planet.
Uh, I'm sure an ice world there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And as soon as and my next question leading into that is, do those different environments impact the play of game here? Like, will you have like an asteroid crashing down on an atmosphereless planetoid, and will you have to deal with lava and ice on those biomes?
Yeah. So for the ice biomes, there are methane pools that will
Mhm.
slow enemies going through. Some planets have tar pits, others have lava, and some of the lava worlds do have asteroids that crash down just
Oh,
randomly all over the map.
neat.
So they do help with the variety quite a bit, I think.
Mm. And in terms of the RTS track here, um, how in depth is that? Like, do you build just basic units, or do you have to build structures? Do you have to mine resources and unlock tech trees like you would in RTS? Or is all that stuff just limited to the tower defense track?
No, between missions, you can use the money you gained to advance your tech tree, or as we call it, just buy things in the store. Um, and as you go through the campaign, more and more things become unlocked. And to use those things, you have to build their associated structure on the actual colony. So, for example, to build ground units, you'd need to build the ground factory, and then later on the heavy ground factory, air factory, etc.
I see. Yeah, that is keeping in with the RTS tropes. Like, and in terms of the tower defense, I'm guessing things are pretty conventional in that area.
Yeah, they are fairly conventional. One of the ways that two ways that we tried to stand out is one, having the dynamic barriers. So when you
Mm.
place towers within a certain range of each other, they'll form a laser wall that can be used to route the enemies in different ways. And then the second way is that we have traps that are pretty unique. So in the mission you're playing right now, you see Gatling traps, where it's a floor trap that just fires chain guns straight up into the air at anything that goes over it. But later in the game, you have really unique traps, like spring traps that will actually toss the units with physics wherever you point them. Mortar traps, traps that actually um, have spinning blades that fling the units around.
Hmm. Now, do the laser walls just apply to like the stationary, let's say, barrier poles, or can the weaponized barriers also generate those laser walls?
Both of them can, yeah. So weaponized or non-weaponized, you'll get the laser wall. So the
Hmm.
barriers don't have a unit cap limit, and they're very cheap. So you can build cheap walls, but the turreted versions also create the walls.
Okay. And in terms of your command ship, is it just for the building, or can it be used to attack units as well? And does that get put up?
Yeah, yeah. The command ship is very upgradable. So it starts out pretty weak and simple, but it can attack, repair, build, and it also has its own unique active abilities. And as you upgrade it, it gets different weapon systems. Like
Mhm.
it has three different weapon systems that can all be used simultaneously, like forward-facing guns, a turret that you can upgrade later on, and also a cruise missile launcher. So it starts out pretty weak, but depending on where you spend your money, you can upgrade it to be pretty powerful.
I see. And are there boss encounters in this game?
Yeah, yeah. There's bosses and mini bosses. On the first level, there's just the boss at the end of the last wave, but on other missions, there are mini bosses as well.
Hmm. And getting back to the overall development of the game, how long is the open beta period supposed to be lasting, and uh, how much more content is planned to be added at this stage?
We're actually considering closing down the beta fairly soon. It'll still be open to people that seek us out and request it, most likely. But yeah, we're preparing to transition into early access at this point. And as for content, that's that's a little up in the air right now. We're going into early access with the focus being on balance and polish,
Hmm.
but it really depends on what people think. Um, During our closed beta period, were quite a few new features we added that people were requesting that we weren't intending to add. So we'd like to say that we just want to focus on balance and polish, but I have a feeling that we're going to be adding stuff based on what people are asking for.
Well, and what have the people been asking for?
There's been quite a few things. Let me just scroll down to my update notes here because pretty much everything in our last four big updates have been a result of people asking for different features. So the mini bosses were something that they asked for and we added. Um, let's see here. We added a survival mode. So once you complete a mission, you'll unlock survival mode and endless mode. The endless mode is pretty standard, like you would expect from a tower defense game. You have endless waves, and you get a bonus for each consecutive wave you defeat up to a certain point. So it can be a way to get a lot of cash. And the survival mode is actually pretty different. You start out with your colony, and you get a period of time to build up while enemies spawn from anywhere on the map, and as it progresses it'll become night and the enemies will start swarming in mass. So that's more like it's closer to their billions than a traditional tower defense at that point.
Hmm. And are there any features that have been listed that you plan on adding? And
um Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
mm,
I'm sure there have been. We've been keeping a pretty comprehensive list of them. Being the artist, I am not the lead on the project. I don't have the final say, so I'll often find myself advocating for features on behalf of the fan base and trying to convince our programmer to get them in, and he's usually pretty good at it, but every once in a while there's a disagreement.
Anyway, in terms of computer platforms, is the game Windows only, or is it also hitting the Mac and the Linux formats?
We're uncertain about that right now. We definitely want to get the Windows version out, but we would like to expand it at least to Linux. And then moving forward, we would also like to port it to consoles. That's kind of up in the air right now because since the engine is fully custom, we won't be able to use any company to port it. Our programmer will need to come up to speed on the different platforms and retool it for them. But he's pretty fast at it, and he does have experience with the Xbox framework, so
Hmm.
I'm hoping it won't take too long.
I couldn't say. Considering I'm not sure anyone could say if it's a completely custom engine. Like,
Yeah,
you know, and would you be targeting just the PlayStation 4 and or Xbox, or would you considering Nintendo Switch version as well?
I'd like to see it on Switch personally, so I'm going to be pushing for that. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I
that
think
carries.
that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, mind you, that carries the additional power complication.
It does, but again, since it's fully custom, that gives us a lot of room for optimization. So I believe there are things we could do that would get it to run smoothly even on the Switch.
Well, I hope that is the case. And um, getting back to the early access period, when do you plan on entering that?
We're planning on early summer.
Uh,
Um, we're ready to go into early access right now as far as the development is concerned, but we want to build up enough hype around the game so that we get a good launch. We want as much data as possible when we start, and that means as many players as possible. So we're building up wish lists and kind of curating a community in preparation for that. When we do go into early access, we plan on it being a fairly short period, probably 4 months or less. We definitely don't want to be one of those companies that sits in early access for years.
Understandable. I mean, I'd say you certainly have enough content there already where that wouldn't be the case. And
Yeah, the core game is finished. As for the original design spec, so what comes after is really based on the fans. What do they want to see? What do they want to see tweaked? What balance changes do they want? You'll notice um, in every mission there's a send feedback button that allows them to type a message directly from within the game, and that goes directly to the programmer. So if a mission is too hard, too easy, they can just write a quick note right from within the mission, and we'll tweak things based on that.
hmm, good to hear. Good to hear. And I suppose my final question is about pricing. Do you have a price set for early access? And will that price change throughout the early access period up to release?
So we're planning on 1995, and we're not sure if that'll change or not.
Uh,
That really depends on how things go. I don't expect it to change much, but
right.
yeah, that's the ballpark we're thinking of.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Right. And now I'll see if my colleagues here have any questions of their own to ask.
I think all of mine have been answered.
I'm good, but it looks pretty interesting.
Mine have been answered.
All right then. Well, John, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here tonight. Um, I enjoyed what I played of it. Granted, that was only like the first mission, just due to time constraints. But it's a solid experience, and I look forward to seeing how it shapes up in the early access period.
Well,
Anyway,
thanks. One thing I failed to mention is that it does support full co-op for the whole campaign. So you and a friend can play it together, and it's a pretty cool experience. But thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
no problem, no problem. Anyway, the game is Colony Siege. It's currently available on Steam, and its planned early access release date is targeted for summer 2020. And pricing will be targeted to 19.99 USD. And be sure to look for it when the summer comes. And on that note, Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. So, finally, some video game news has hit the streets. Like, the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 5 have been revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue there is it's all the technical stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard the 5 event was like an hour and like incredibly boring to anyone who does not build computers routinely.
It was the GDC presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know what a GDC presentation looks like, it was that, but consumers aren't going to be interested in what they were talking about. That was for developers. Like,
And/or geeks like me, but that's beside the point.
quite interesting, but it wasn't helped by the fact that Mark Cerny has a very, very dulcet voice. Like, I found myself almost falling asleep at points. Like, but once again, it's all the technical stuff, and in terms of our show, we don't generally get into the the deep dive details about technical specification, like, because that tends to be incredibly boring.
Yeah.
Like, not to mention, this is, in terms of what they revealed, pretty theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't see any games. I think we saw some tech demos from the Xbox side of things, but point of order is, we know more about the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One X, but not really in line with our focus. We'll probably talk more when they do the consumer level presentation. When they show off some games and pricing, release date, what the actual systems look.
I did also hear that backwards compatibility was not exactly.
From what I understand, the backwards compatibility of the PlayStation 5 is okay. It was explained in great detail.
Yeah, what I hear is hopefully 100 PS4 games at launch, and then maybe they'll add more, and no PS1 through 3 games.
Well, yeah. So the way the backwards compatibility works is they have they've added PlayStation 4 logic to the PlayStation 5. It's kind of technical. We don't have time to get into it, but and it was a misworded statement. But once again, not really what we're talking about. What we are talking about is actually a rumor that emerged on Sunday. And if it is to be believed, it's very shocking. Okay, in case you missed this one coming out, apparently Sony and Konami are, the rumor has been.
Oh, that thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, this is what we're actually talking about. So the rumor mill has been churning that Konami and Sony are working on a couple of Silent Hill projects.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, the rumors have stated that there are at least two projects. One of them is a entry being developed by Team Siren.
Mm-hmm.
They are most notable for being not just the developers of the Forbidden Siren series, but a lot of Team Siren. They worked on the original 4 Silent Hill games. Those games were developed by a team called Team Silent.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see where the name game went there.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's even more so in Japanese, in which you only have to take off the T.
Right. So I think I've seen it's rumored that this might be a remake of the original Silent Hill, or maybe not. That's the thing with rumors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other side of the coin, the much bigger side of the coin, is apparently Sony is trying to patch things up with Konami and Hideo Kojima.
Or at least it's some. I mean, most of the rumors have been saying they're literally trying to purchase certain IPs and stuff.
We'll get to that in a minute, but
Oh yeah, okay.
But this is more about this specific project, which is supposed to be a revival of Silent Hills.
Yep.
According to the scuttlebutt, apparently Sony is being fueled by this because of the intense demand for Silent Hills. 5 years later?
Yeah, like looking on.
The thing is that that's not the only patching up you have to do either, because Guillermo got pretty burned by that experience, I think.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the rumors have been centering around Kojima and Konami. Like, nobody's mentioned Guillermo del Toro. Or Norman Reedus, though presumably he would be involved since, Death Stranding.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know what stage these negotiations are, or if this is even going to happen, because if you recall, the whole fracas around Metal Gear Solid 5 was pretty ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I don't see why Kojima would want to work with Konami after this.
Indeed.
Only if he needs the money or something. And I wouldn't say that frankly, that he's the only one in the right there either, because there is a certain point at which an auteur creator still needs editors and people to tell him, maybe not Konami Corporate, but someone to tell him, hey, tone something down, or hey, it might be more enjoyable if such and such a thing was neatened up a little bit.
Well, we're talking about, there's a difference between having...
no, I'm just, a lot of it was over, editorial control and stuff.
Well, it was, the biggest thing was about money, because the Fox engine was so expensive, and Konami was transitioning to a more mobile-centric development philosophy. Metal Gear Solid 5 was just something from a previous era, but it's just the whole getting rid of anything Kojima, and not letting him attend the Game Awards.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently there was some retaliatory stuff after the firing. Apparently Kojima was having problem getting insurance and finding a new place. But that's a bit of the conjecture. It's just it was a pretty public.
Oh yeah.
And I don't see why, Kojima would want to walk back into that kind of environment. Granted, he's not under direct employment anymore, but it's like
They still
he-
haven't been exactly gracious with like his former studio and stuff. So
yeah, it's also Kojima would obviously demand complete creative control over this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the whole revival of Silent Hills just has a lot of pitfalls.
I mean, also read as a giant fucking crevasse, but yeah.
Yeah, that too. But I suppose that's up to Sony. Like now, if the other part of the rumor, the stuff that got tacked on Sunday was apparently Sony is trying to outright buy not just the Metal Gear franchise or these they're trying to buy Metal Gear, Silent Hill, and Castlevania from Konami. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
which I'll note those are three franchises that Kojima either worked on or was planning to have some involvement in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
For the record, Kojima Productions produced the first Lords of Shadow game. But generally that's not held against Kojima. And there's no real rationale known behind why Sony is out of the blue trying to purchase three of the biggest franchises from Konami.
aside from, hey, they think games from those franchises would probably sell well, and Konami hasn't done anything with most of them in a while.
Right.
That said, Konami might not want to sell immediately because they might actually be planning on doing some things.
Right. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Since they've decided that they might want to make video games again.
Or, more ports. Keep in mind, Castlevania got a Classics pack just last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and Castlevania also has that Netflix series going on, which is popular. So, Castlevania is certainly active. Like Metal Gear, Metal Gear Survive came out last year. It was an affront to all mankind, but
Yep.
it's still a thing that carried the Metal Gear name. Really, it is the Silent Hill brand that's been the most dormant.
Yeah.
It's not even re-releases, though I think we can guess why that hasn't occurred again.
Yeah. Although Silent Hill is also the hardest thing to... you can make a Metal Gear or something game and just have it be weird and stuff. The Silent Hill games, to be good, have to really grab a certain tone.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
We've seen enough bad Silent Hill products to know this.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Not just the game. The movie was pretty shit.
There was a movie?
Yes.
The first movie was okay, in my opinion, but that's just me. No, the second one was terrible. That was utterly trash.
Shocking, I know. A video game movie being awful?
Yeah, meanwhile, water is wet.
But, this is just the rumor right now. We have no indication of, I presume if these are true, we will get an announcement when the PlayStation 5 is ready to show some games. Because, Sony is about done with the PlayStation 4 in terms of development. It's the only things left in terms of the AAA space are The Last of Us 2 and The Ghost of Tsushima, and I think there's also some some PlayStation VR stuff and downloadable projects. But
Mm-hmm.
Sony's been indicating for about 2 years now that what they ever since their last E3 appearance, that this was it in terms of what they had in the tank for the PlayStation 4. And we would presume that maybe not the Silent Hills project, because once again, we don't know what state that's in. We don't know what state any of these projects in. If they're just starting, if they've been in development for like a year, did Sony buy the IP? Is this a joint collaboration? So on and so forth. There's just a lot of details missing because, well, once again, if anything, it looks like the Silent Hill stuff is true because there have been multiple sources confirming that these projects are in development. As far as the IP purchase, nothing on that end, at least not right now. But we'll revisit this when it's time, and thankfully, video game news is starting to come out, like mainly because this was supposed to be GDC week.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
Right, that thing that didn't happen on account of the sick.
which is just about everything now.
Pretty much.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's about it for this topic of discussion. And indeed, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Let's see, the week ahead. We do have a Friday show coming up on Friday, March 20th. We'll be having Helgard DeBarros of One Little Surf. We'll be talking about his game Into the Valley. Looking forward to that. And on the Sunday reviews, let's see, we'll be having reviews of My Big Sister, Football Game, and One Night Stand. Until then, I shall wish you good gaming.